I'm Mathias Jud. Since 20 years, I'm working together with Christoph Wachter, not exactly on blockchain, but we are looking into the power structure of our communication possibilities. In 2014, we have been invited by the Swiss Embassy in Berlin to present our art projects. And this invitation really thrilled us, because the Swiss Embassy in Berlin is special, as it sits right next to the Federal Chancellery. No one is closer to Chancellor Merkel than the Swiss diplomats. The government district in Berlin also contains the Reichstag, which is Germany's parliament, and the Brandenburg Gate. And right next to the gate, there are other embassies, in particular the US and the British embassy. Although Germany is an advanced democracy, citizens are limited in their constitutional rights in this governed district. The right of assembly and the right to demonstrate are restricted there. And this is interesting from an artistic point of view. Our opportunities to exercise participation and to express ourselves are always bound to a certain order. If we become aware of the constellation, the terms and conditions of our communication, it not only broadens our horizons, it allows us to look behind the regulation that limit our worldview. Over the last years, we learned that from the roofs of the American and the British embassies, the secret services had been listening to the entire district, including the mobile phone of Angela Merkel. The antennas of the British GCHQ were hidden in a white cylindrical radome, while the listening post of the American NSA is covered by radio transparent screens. But how to address these hidden and disguised forces? We accepted the invitation by the Swiss Embassy and used this opportunity to exploit the specific situation. If people are spying on us, it stands to reason that they have to listen to what we are saying. On the roof of the Swiss Embassy, we installed a series of antennas. They weren't as sophisticated as those used by the Americans and the British. They were makeshift can antennas, not camouflage, but totally obvious and visible. And then the Academy of Arts joined the project. And so we built another large antenna on their rooftop, exactly between the listening posts of the NSA and the GCHQ. Never have we been observed in such detail while building an art installation. A helicopter was circling over our heads with a camera registering each and every move we made. And on the roof of the US Embassy, security officers patrolled. Although the government district in Berlin is governed by a strict police order, there are no specific laws relating to digital communication. Our installation was therefore perfectly legal, and the Swiss ambassador even informed Chancellor Merkel about it. We called the project Can You Hear Me? The antennas created an open and free Wi-Fi communication network in which anyone who wanted to would be able to participate using any Wi-Fi-enabled device and be able to send messages to those listening on the frequencies that were being intercepted. Text messages, voice chats, file sharing, anything could be sent anonymously. And people did communicate. Over 15,000 messages were sent. Here are some examples. Hello world, hello Berlin, hello NSA, hello GCHQ. This is the NSA's Achilles heel, open networks. NSA agents do the right thing, blow the whistle. This is the NSA, in God we trust, all others we track. Agents, what twisted story of yourself will you tell your grandchildren? This one I'm not going to read, but it means do not spy on me in the binary representation of ASCII code. Make love, not cyberwar. At NSA, my neighbors are noisy, please send a drone strike. Anonymous is watching NSA GCHQ. We are part of your organizations, expect us, we will shut down. Can You Hear Me created a platform to discuss the potential and the limits of communication. We invited the embassies and government departments to participate in this open network too. And to our surprise, they did. Files appeared on the network, including classified documents leaked from a parliamentary investigation commission, which highlights that the free exchange and discussion of information is starting to become difficult even for members of a parliament. The project Can You Hear Me was thrilling because it showed how the permeating regime of surveillance can be challenged and disrupted if different positions come together. An accidental passerby, a member of the government, a diplomat. All those different positions find together in a mouthpiece of self-reliance and resistance. We are always part of a specific setting with our communication possibilities. Through it, we gain or lose agency. Since over 10 years, we are examining the forms of rating, ranking, filtering of communication possibilities and information access. Within our projects, the infinite freedom of a virtual space was unveiled as an illusion. The World Wide Web, the platform for global data exchange, is quite a diverse, heterogeneous formation. Many nations have an active internet censorship. Here is a collection of examples. This is a censored blog site from Iran. A proxy service censored in Thailand. A censored blog in Switzerland. Flickr, for example, is censored in the Emirates. This is a blocked porn site in Germany. And this is the Wikipedia site censored in China. Some censorship is disguised. Others inform the censorship about the censorship through the web page. We realized several open source projects. They serve as an invitation to explore the borders of one's own perception for all participants in every specific situation, even in heavily censored and surveilled situations, such as in the Chinese internet cafes. Doing that, we got in contact with internet users and activists from all around the world. To our own surprise, even from Northern Korea. Especially the narratives of Twitter and Facebook revolutions are traps. The first so-called Twitter revolution in Iran in 2009 exposed itself not to be the mass movement of Iranian activists, but of an English-speaking crowd in the Western world. As during the protests on the ground, mostly the contrary happened, a shutdown of the internet. On this list, you see some of the internet shutdowns in the past decade due to political reasons. But how to communicate during an internet and mobile service shutdown, like the one that happened in Ethiopia in 2016? In the last years, not only the network and the possibilities of surveillance changed, but also the devices in our hands. They became very complex and powerful machines. This allowed us to set up a system that interconnects Wi-Fi-enabled computers and smartphones via software to an independent communication mesh network. The open source software is modularly built and can be extended. This independent, redundant open communication principle gives us another possibility to communicate. In digital communication, network users are depending from the network itself, from infrastructure, from service providers. Since 2011, we developed CallNet. The open source software connects different devices directly over Wi-Fi. It works, therefore, without a mobile telephone network and without any central server. The program can be passed on like a virus from user to user. When a new user discovers a Wi-Fi callnet access, one can download the software from this very connection. After the installation, one can use it immediately and pass it on to others. Syrian activists were with the first who joined the project. They started to use the software and developed it with us. Wi-Fi has a range limit. Without any obstacles, this limit between the router and the devices is about 250 meters. We built antennas out of cheap and simple material, so-called CAN antennas. They can focus all the radio waves in one direction and make much longer connections. There are also some limitations in the Wi-Fi protocol, but they can be changed when one is using open and free Wi-Fi drivers. In 2014, we have been invited to Istanbul to give a series of workshops, also in the Asian part of the town, south of the Bosporus. People started building independent networks and connections on the basis of CallNet. 1 year before our arrival, demonstrations started against the construction project on the terrain of the Gezi Park in Istanbul. The demonstrations grew after a violent police intervention and hard reactions of Prime Minister Erdogan. The protests turned against the government and their authoritarian politics. People in other Turkish cities connected to the demands and started protesting too. The Gezi Park became a symbol of civil resistance against the government and against police violence. Prime Minister Erdogan became a controversial latest with the Gezi Park protest. There were allegations of corruption. The Turkish municipal elections in spring 2014 became crucial for the political direction of Turkey. To prevent publications critical to the government, the Turkish authorities blocked Twitter and short time later YouTube too. The blocking was first done in the form of a DNS censorship, which is, you may know that, relatively simple to circumvent by just entering another DNS server in your device's network communication settings. Censorship got worse during our stay in Istanbul in spring 2014, when the whole DNS traffic suddenly was overtaken to no matter what server, and was then controlled fully by the authorities. Over 40,000 websites were blocked at that time in Turkey. Often the World Wide Web is seen as a tactical media. It is seen as a medium for counterstatements, enlightenment, and critique. The platforms are not reliable partners for political activists, though. Facebook, for example, requests clear names from its users. It regulates user-generated content in accordance with the governments and deletes accounts of political activists. Twitter and Yahoo pass on personal data to the authorities. Activists are prosecuted in many countries for their online expression. Together with activists, we developed an extended version of CallNet based on their experience from the Gezi Park protest. Network outages happen often during protests, also in the Gezi Park. This can be the consequence of specific switch-offs or also due to the congestion of the existing networks. We developed independent and mobile stations that can run even during power outages or network failures to allow local communication. Two aspects have been important for the independent network. Communication within the demonstration should be ensured, and secondly, information about the demonstration should be passed on anonymously. The stations can be used for text messages, voice chats, and file sharing. The Gezi Park editions allows links to the internet and other networks. Information can be exchanged, even time delayed. The situation in Turkey has developed further. Nowadays, over 100,000 websites are blocked. And the new presidential system of Turkey gives President Erdogan even greater powers. Anonymity is often confused with encryption. But even with encryption, many information are visible. These data are often called metadata, for example, the IP address, message length, etc. And sometimes even more than metadata, for example, the subject and the receiver, here in an example of a GPG encrypted email. In these internet-independent and local networks that we build, people are not identifiable by their SIM card or their IP address, as the addresses are purely random and the messages travel over hubs. We have created a situation from which we contemplate the specific communication options and limitations. We can then specifically address and overcome them. We should not take it for granted to be boundlessly connected. We can't start making our own connections, fighting for the idea of an equal and globally interconnectable world. This is essential to overcome our speechlessness and the separation provoked by rival political forces. The fate of people living in the makeshift settlements on the outskirts of Paris is hidden and faded from view. It's a vicious circle. It's not poverty, not racism, not exclusion that are new. What is new is how these realities are hidden and how people are made invisible in an age of allegedly global and overwhelming communication and exchange. Such makeshift settlements are considered illegal, and therefore those living in them don't have a chance of making their voices heard. On the contrary, every time they appear, every time they risk becoming visible, merely gives ground for further persecution, expulsion, and suppression. In France exists anti-terror and anti-copyright infringement laws that require a permanent address and a bank account in order to be able to get an own internet access. These laws exclude the already marginalized even more. Otherwise cut off from the internet, we created a very special network together with the families in the informal settlements. These networks interconnect an informal settlement in the outskirts of Paris. This bicycle has been equipped with a mini computer and numerous CAN antennas. Commands can be sent via Wi-Fi connection, for example, sending or checking emails or downloading music. If the bicycle is near an internet hotspot, it dials in automatically and the commands are executed. The bicycle connects people in informal settlements with the internet. This shows the file transfer back to the settlement. Technically spoken, it is a delay-tolerant network, and it comes with an unconventional approach to privacy because the last mile is self-owned, private, and offline. Let's take a look at one last picture we took in 2015 on the Greek island of Lesbos, the hotspot where many asylum seekers stranded. In the background, you can see the Turkish coast. We have been working for years with many asylum seekers and people on the flight. And I think it is very important to remember how data traces can be a blessing or a curse. A blessing when a signal can call for help, and a real threat to life when someone is surveilled or hunted in a war zone or on dangerous escape routes. Thank you.